5 centuries ago, a solitary Florentine, Niccolò Machiavelli, thrust into an unwelcome exile from the very political vortex he knew intimately, commenced an audacious intellectual quest. His profound mission was not to chart new, uncharted continents or to meticulously map unexplored seas, but to, with an almost surgical precision, dissect the very essence of the human soul itself. Not in the abstract, often ephemeral philosophical pursuit of ideal virtues or the ethereal ideals of a utopian society, but in the raw, unsentimental and brutally pragmatic examination of what genuinely compels people to act, what compels them to obey, what compels them to defy, or what compels them to conquer. The insights he meticulously unearthed were so disquietingly accurate, so utterly devoid of comforting self-deceptions, that they were ruthlessly suppressed, publicly censored, and whispered only in clandestine circles for generations. Yet modern psychology, now fortified by cutting-edge neuroscience, vast data sets of human behavior, and the rigorous methodologies of scientific inquiry, is, over 500 years later, systematically validating his every observation, unequivocally confirming his ancient genius. This discourse is not confined to the dusty annals of political theory alone, nor is it merely a recitation of historical events or a chronological account of the past, destined to remain a sterile academic exercise. It delves instead into the immutable laws of human predictability, the deep-seated, often subconscious mechanisms embedded within our minds that Machiavelli apprehended with a chilling precision centuries before the very inception of the first psychology laboratory. He identified the subtle yet potent triggers, the inherent and pervasive cognitive biases, the fundamental and often unconscious desires that render us profoundly susceptible to influence, that dictate the very essence of our loyalties, and that fundamentally shape our collective perceptions of reality. And the profound, almost unsettling implication is this: if you truly assimilate these timeless truths, you acquire a master key capable of unlocking not only the intricate tapestry of the past, but also of discerning the predictable currents of future human behavior. You gain the terrifying foresight to anticipate the choices and reactions of others, not through mythical prophecy, but through an unwavering understanding of the unseen gears that drive the human machine. Consider for a moment the intricate ballets of power that unfold before you daily in the rarefied air of corporate boardrooms, across the sensational headlines of news cycles, and even within the intimate, seemingly benign dynamics of your own family unit. What superficially appears to be random chaos or the capricious whims of individuals often reveals itself under Machiavelli's unsparing lens as the predictable and inevitable outcome of fundamental psychological forces. We are not as uniquely unpredictable as we often believe ourselves to be. Instead, we are governed by a universal set of predispositions, instincts honed by millennia of evolution and accumulated experience, patterns that Machiavelli unraveled through relentless, dispassionate observation. He saw the human being not as a blank slate or a purely rational actor, but as a creature of habit, fear, desire, and predictable irrationality, a being whose internal landscape was as governed by laws as the celestial spheres. And once these foundational patterns become discernible to you, the world ceases to be a bewildering collection of unconnected events and transforms, instead, into a meticulously designed, albeit often ruthless system where cause and effect are terrifyingly clear. My objective here is not to advocate for any particular course of action, nor to preach a new doctrine, nor to offer comforting platitudes that soothe rather than illuminate. Rather, it is to illuminate these profound ancient truths, now rigorously corroborated by contemporary science. It is to equip you with the foresight that stems from understanding human nature at its most fundamental and unadorned level. This knowledge is a tool, morally neutral in itself, yet terrifyingly powerful in its application. By the conclusion of this insightful journey, you will not only possess a comprehensive grasp of Machiavelli's unparalleled genius, but will also acquire a robust framework for recognizing the true, often hidden, drivers of human action, thereby rendering you impervious to the very influences that typically ensnare the unsuspecting. You will understand why some consistently ascend to positions of formidable influence, while others perpetually remain in subordinate roles, forever reactive, never truly initiating. Are you prepared to perceive the invisible threads that subtly manipulate human consciousness? Threads first revealed by a Renaissance visionary and now empirically confirmed by the rigorous scientific inquiry of the modern mind? Let me give you a chilling glimpse into the raw power of these insights. In 1494, during the tumultuous Italian wars, the city-state of Pisa, clinging desperately to its ancient republican liberties, found itself besieged by a vastly superior French army. The conventional military wisdom dictated a long, bloody siege, one that Pisa, with its limited resources, could not possibly win. Yet the Pisans, driven by an almost fanatical devotion to freedom, prepared for a fight to the last man. But the French commander, King Charles VIII, a man not known for his subtlety, did something remarkable. He didn't unleash his full military might. Instead, he deployed a psychological strategy, one so precisely aligned with Machiavelli's yet-to-be articulated principles, that it broke Pisa's will without a single decisive battle. This wasn't magic. It was the precise application of human psychology, one of 4 profound insights we will explore that separates the truly untouchable from the perpetually vulnerable. The man who gave us the unvarnished truth about power, Niccolò Machiavelli, operated from a simple yet brutal premise: to understand humans, observe them as they are, not as they should be. He tore down the veil of idealism and revealed the stark, often uncomfortable predictability of human behavior under pressure. His brilliance lies in the systematic clarity with which he dissected the mechanisms of influence. He showed us that power isn't granted, it's taken. Respect isn't given, it's commanded. And loyalty isn't earned through virtue, it's secured through a profound understanding of the human condition. In the annals of history, leaders who grasped these truths shaped nations, while those who ignored them faded into obscurity. Modern psychology simply provides the scientific lexicon for what Machiavelli saw with his naked eye. So, prepare yourself. Over the course of this exploration, we will dissect 4 profound, yet undeniably effective laws of human psychology that define the strategic playbook of the truly untouchable. These aren't abstract theories for academic debate. They are actionable blueprints for understanding, navigating, and ultimately shaping the world around you. Each law builds upon the last, forming a comprehensive system for influencing outcomes that remains as potent today as it was in Machiavelli's Florence. You will learn to recognize the subtle cues that reveal underlying motives, the psychological triggers that compel action, and the predictable patterns that govern both individual and collective behavior. This knowledge carries immense power, demanding your utmost attention and a willingness to confront truths that may challenge your deepest convictions. By the end of this journey, you will possess a new lens through which to view every interaction. The seemingly random chaos of human affairs will begin to resolve into discernible patterns. You will see the world not as a series of isolated events, but as a complex, interconnected system where psychological forces are constantly at play. And most importantly, you will gain the clarity to make conscious choices, to act with purpose, and to position yourself not as a mere participant in the human drama, but as an architect of your own destiny. The lessons of Machiavelli, refined by 5 centuries of observation and confirmed by modern science, are about to be unleashed. Are you ready to command? The first profound insight Machiavelli uncovered into the human psyche is its fundamental irrationality and deep susceptibility to cognitive biases. He meticulously observed that individuals, even those widely regarded as astute and intelligent, routinely make decisions that deviate sharply from objective facts or sound logical deduction. Instead, their choices are often direct products of deeply ingrained emotional responses, pre-existing notions, and inherently flawed mental shortcuts. This starkly contradicts the conventional assertion that human beings are primarily rational actors, driven by pure reason. Machiavelli, witnessing the perpetual flux of human affairs and the often absurd outcomes of human endeavors, discerned that passions, the comforting embrace of self-deception, and the inherent human tendency to believe what is convenient invariably superseded cold, hard logic. He understood that the human mind functions less as a flawless computational engine and more as a dynamic storytelling mechanism, perpetually constructing narratives that reinforce existing convictions and emotional states, even if those narratives grossly distort objective reality. This internal narrative, once formed, becomes extraordinarily resistant to external factual challenge, proving the terrifying pliability of human belief. In Chapter 6 of The Prince, where Machiavelli delves into the acquisition of new principalities, he subtly yet pointedly articulates this phenomenon of irrational resistance. He remarks on the inherent difficulty faced by an innovator. The innovator has for enemies all those who have done well under the old conditions and lukewarm defenders in those who may do well under the new. This seemingly straightforward observation offers a pristine, pre-scientific description of powerful cognitive biases like confirmation bias and loss aversion. Individuals instinctively cling to the familiar status quo, however suboptimal it may objectively be, and exhibit a profound aversion to perceived losses associated with change, regardless of the potential for logical benefits. Their resistance to innovation is not a product of rational assessment, but an emotional reflex rooted in the desire to preserve established comfort and past gains. This resistance, driven by psychological predispositions rather than objective evaluation, represents a formidable barrier that astute leaders must either overcome or skillfully circumvent, often by appealing to emotions rather than logic. It's a battle not of facts, but of perceptions and deeply held comfort zones. The wise leader understands that a sudden, jarring change often activates these innate defensive mechanisms, leading to predictable resistance even when the change is beneficial. Therefore, the approach must be subtle, incremental, and attuned to the psychological landscape. Consider the extraordinary historical narrative of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the pivotal figure who unified China in the 3rd century BCE. His strategic brilliance extended far beyond mere military prowess. It was rooted in his profound comprehension of the human aversion to complexity and the inherent craving for simple, absolute certainties. Following his unification of the previously warring states, Qin initiated a radical and comprehensive program of standardization, encompassing weights, measures, currency, and even the intricate system of written characters. While these were rationally justifiable moves to consolidate imperial power and streamline governance, he concurrently embraced legalism. This was a harsh philosophical doctrine advocating strict laws and draconian punishments, predicated on the belief that human nature was intrinsically selfish and that only overwhelming fear could guarantee social order. This seemingly severe approach resonated deeply with a pervasive human desire for certainty and clear boundaries in a world ravaged by centuries of chaotic warfare and pervasive instability. Populations, mentally exhausted by incessant conflict and existential ambiguity, willingly relinquished certain freedoms in exchange for predictable, albeit often brutal, order. They weren't rationally weighing the philosophical merits of legalism. Rather, they were emotionally drawn to its seductive promise of stability. Qin's monumental success was thus not solely military, it was fundamentally psychological, adeptly exploiting the universal human craving for simple, unambiguous, and absolute authority. His capacity to impose a singular, rigid framework upon a previously fractured society directly tapped into a primal human need for clarity and control, however illusory that control might ultimately prove to be. The speed with which vast and diverse populations accepted his iron rule stands as a chilling testament to this inherent human vulnerability, a testament to the power of imposed simplicity. His ruthlessness was matched only by his understanding of the human mind's desperate need for order amidst chaos. Modern psychology, specifically through the robust frameworks of behavioral economics and cognitive science, provides overwhelming empirical validation for what Machiavelli so astutely intuited. The groundbreaking research by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky on cognitive biases has illuminated dozens of systematic and predictable errors embedded within human judgment. We are consistently susceptible to phenomena such as confirmation bias, which leads us to favor information confirming our existing beliefs. The availability heuristic, causing us to overestimate the probability of events that readily come to mind. Anchoring where our judgments are unduly influenced by an initial piece of information, and framing effects demonstrating how the presentation of information profoundly alters our choices. These are not isolated intellectual deficiencies, but rather inherent built-in mental shortcuts that our brains employ to efficiently navigate an overwhelmingly complex world. While these shortcuts expedite decision-making, they concurrently lead to systematic, predictable irrationality. These biases are not deviations from a perfectly rational system, but fundamental, efficient, and often predictable features of a cognitive system optimized for rapid adaptation rather than absolute meticulous accuracy. They represent the inherent software bugs in the human operating system that Machiavelli so expertly identified and exploited long before the advent of any computer. Think about the persistent and often destructive phenomenon of conspiracy theories in today's digital age. Despite the existence of overwhelming and readily accessible contradictory evidence, millions of individuals steadfastly adhere to intricate, frequently absurd narratives. Why? Because these theories typically offer simple, emotionally gratifying explanations for complex, profoundly unsettling events. They conveniently provide a clear, identifiable enemy, a comforting sense of possessing secret, privileged knowledge, and a strong tribal identity for their adherents. This psychological dynamic directly exploits our innate desire for simplicity and our hardwired tendency to seek discernible patterns, even in situations where none objectively exist. The human mind, when confronted with uncomfortable or ambiguous truths, often prefers a coherent, albeit false, explanation over the arduous, intellectually demanding process of grappling with a messy, ambiguous reality. Machiavelli, with his characteristic grim realism, would undoubtedly acknowledge this. The human mind, when left to its own devices, will frequently construct its own comforting reality if the objective truth proves too harsh or too overwhelmingly complex to confront. The allure of a seemingly coherent, internally consistent yet fundamentally false narrative is often far more compelling than the fragmented, intellectually demanding and unsettling truth. It is a stark testament to the human aversion to cognitive dissonance and a chilling testament to the power of narrative over fact. This isn't just about belief. It's about psychological survival in a world that offers too many unsettling questions and too few easy answers. The practical implication of this insight is chillingly straightforward. Genuine influence often does not necessitate superior logic or compelling factual argumentation. Instead, it frequently demands a superior, cynical understanding of the inherent human propensity for irrationality. The most effective persuaders do not endeavor to alter your convictions through the brute force of facts. Rather, they subtly guide your thinking by skillfully exploiting your pre-existing biases. They meticulously construct and present choices in ways that trigger your innate loss aversion. They artfully appeal to your deep-seated desire for social validation and conformity, and they strategically present information that confirms your existing beliefs, thereby making the acceptance of their viewpoint feel like an organic, personal discovery. The truly untouchable leader comprehends that the most reliable pathway to influence often circumvents pure reason, instead navigating through the powerful, subterranean currents of human bias. They do not futilely struggle against these inherent predispositions. Rather, they adeptly flow with them, subtly guiding people to conclusions that precisely serve their overarching strategic objectives. This mastery allows them to meticulously create a subjective reality for others that is seamlessly aligned with their own desired outcomes, often securing the willing and unconscious complicity of those being influenced. This is not about winning an argument, but about winning a mind by understanding its natural predilections and vulnerabilities. This deep understanding of human irrationality is the first key to Machiavellian power. The second profound insight Machiavelli meticulously decoded is the pervasive human craving for simplicity and absolute certainty, particularly when confronted with overwhelming complexity. Humanity possesses an intrinsic psychological imperative to reduce ambiguity, to discover unequivocal answers, and to steadfastly adhere to established narratives, even when those narratives are demonstrably incomplete or inherently flawed. This fundamental predisposition constitutes a potent psychological vulnerability, as individuals will instinctively privilege the comfort derived from a simple, unambiguous explanation over the arduous, intellectually demanding pursuit of a nuanced, complex, or ambiguous truth. This is not merely a cognitive preference, it is a fundamental neurological imperative to impose order on chaos, to construct a coherent, compelling narrative, even if its coherence is achieved by overlooking inconvenient details or by selectively filtering information. This inherent drive for certainty, while a survival mechanism refined over millennia, is also a profound vulnerability readily exploited by those who understand its raw power. It is the yearning for a map in a trackless wilderness, even if that map is incomplete or misleading. In Chapter 10 of The Prince, where Machiavelli discusses the assessment of a principality's internal strength, he advises a ruler to ensure their state can sustain itself by its own resources. While this counsel extends to military and economic self-sufficiency, it subtly hints at a deeper psychological autonomy. However, Machiavelli concurrently observed how readily populations surrender this very autonomy when presented with seductively simple narratives that unequivocally promise an end to pervasive uncertainty. He noted with a cynical precision that individuals were remarkably willing to accept a clear, unambiguous falsehood over a perplexing, confusing truth, especially when that falsehood conveniently aligned with their pre-existing desires or substantially reduced their immediate cognitive effort. The inherent discomfort of cognitive dissonance, the mental strain involved in simultaneously entertaining conflicting ideas, acts as a formidable psychological impetus for individuals to seek and rigidly adhere to any explanation that offers immediate intellectual relief, irrespective of its ultimate factual accuracy. This fundamental human drive is exploited relentlessly today. The rampant proliferation of misinformation and deliberately constructed disinformation is a direct consequence of this mechanism. Complex contemporary issues are routinely truncated and distilled into easily digestible, emotionally resonant, and frequently factually inaccurate soundbites, bypassing critical thought to directly appeal to our innate cognitive yearning for simplistic certainty. This psychological shortcut, while efficient, is a profound vulnerability that shrewd operators know how to trigger with devastating effectiveness, often to their own immense strategic advantage. Consider the remarkable and enduring success of the Roman Catholic Church in sustaining its colossal spiritual and temporal authority across medieval Europe for over a millennium. This monumental achievement was not solely attributable to military might or astute political alliances, though both were undeniably factors. Fundamentally, it was meticulously constructed upon its unparalleled mastery in understanding and exploiting humanity, its deep-seated craving for absolute simplicity and unwavering certainty within an otherwise chaotic, terrifying, and profoundly unpredictable world. Medieval existence was often brutally brief, relentlessly harsh, and permeated by inexplicable suffering. The universe, to the common person, appeared vast, mysterious, and frequently cruel, teeming with forces utterly beyond human comprehension. Within this overwhelming maelstrom of pervasive uncertainty, the Church offered incredibly simple, unequivocally absolute, and all-encompassing answers. A definitive divine plan for humanity, meticulously clear moral codes, an infallible path to guaranteed salvation, and a rigid, hierarchical institutional structure that provided unwavering spiritual guidance and profound psychological security. Individuals were explicitly dissuaded from questioning, from critically analyzing, or from grappling with complex existential ambiguities. Instead, they were exhorted to believe, to conform, and to find immense psychological solace in a meticulously preordained narrative that purported to explain everything, however harsh or logically inconsistent it might appear upon closer inspection. This was not about fostering genuine understanding, but about cultivating profound obedience through cognitive comfort, a deliberate strategy of intellectual subjugation. The Church's doctrines, promulgated with unshakable institutional authority and rigorously reinforced through ubiquitous ritual, pervasive communal participation, and the constant, terrifying threat of eternal damnation, became the ultimate, indisputable, simple truth within a fundamentally complex world. Dissent within this carefully constructed psychological framework was not merely a theological heresy. It was, more profoundly, a terrifying return to intellectual confusion and existential uncertainty. This carefully cultivated intellectual simplicity, artfully presented as an incontrovertible divine revelation, consequently erected a psychological fortress that proved almost impregnable, enabling the Church to exert and maintain profound, enduring influence over both secular rulers and the vast common populace for centuries. Populations within this paradigm were not necessarily swayed by purely rational theological arguments. Instead, they were profoundly and almost irresistibly drawn to the immense cognitive comfort and psychological relief offered by an absolute, unambiguous, and all-encompassing worldview that effectively liberated them from the onerous burden of independent critical thought and the existential anxiety of personal choice. This wasn't about cultivating genuine belief, but about fostering deep-seated adherence through cognitive relief, a masterclass in psychological manipulation for social control, where the highest truth became the simplest answer. Modern psychology, particularly illuminated by seminal studies in cognitive load theory and the intricate psychology of belief formation, unequivocally confirms Machiavelli's astute observation. The human brain, a marvel of evolutionary design, is fundamentally engineered for efficiency. When confronted with an overwhelming deluge of information, pervasive ambiguity, or a bewildering array of conflicting viewpoints, we invariably experience cognitive overload, a debilitating state of mental exhaustion and confusion. To escape this deeply unpleasant state, we instinctively default to the simplest, most immediately available explanation, especially if that explanation originates from an ostensibly authoritative source or conveniently aligns with our pre-existing beliefs and biases. This is not indicative of intellectual indolence. It represents a fundamental, hardwired operating principle of the human mind, a primal survival mechanism refined over millennia to facilitate rapid decision-making in uncertain environments. The relentless proliferation of misinformation and deliberately constructed disinformation in the contemporary digital sphere directly exploits this very mechanism. Complex, multifaceted issues are ruthlessly truncated and distilled into easily digestible, emotionally resonant, and frequently factually inaccurate sound bites, bypassing critical thought to directly appeal to our innate cognitive yearning for simplistic certainty. This psychological shortcut, while efficient, is a profound vulnerability that shrewd operators know how to trigger with devastating effectiveness, often to their own immense strategic advantage. Think about the widespread and often alarming appeal of overly simplified political ideologies or convoluted, all-encompassing conspiracy theories in today's relentlessly hyper-complex world. When confronted with the daunting intricacies of global economics, the perplexing nuances of climate change, or the multifaceted realities of geopolitical conflicts, many individuals recoil from the substantial mental effort required for genuine, nuanced comprehension. Instead, they instinctively embrace narratives that offer readily identifiable heroes and villains, straightforward chains of cause and effect, and unequivocally definitive solutions, even if these narratives are factually baseless, logically inconsistent, or demonstrably false. The innate human desire for cognitive ease, for a world mercifully reduced to comfortably digestible binaries, renders individuals extraordinarily vulnerable to those who can artfully provide such an illusion of certainty. This fundamental psychological vulnerability is precisely why demagogues often achieve remarkable success. They present profoundly comforting simplicity where objective truth invariably presents unsettling complexity. They shrewdly exploit our primal fear of the unknown by offering a seemingly complete and unambiguous map of reality, irrespective of its ultimate accuracy. They don't win by being right. They win by being simple, clear, and relentlessly consistent, filling a void of uncertainty with comforting, albeit often false, answers, a strategic victory achieved through intellectual shortcuts. The practical application for the untouchable leader is profoundly astute. True, enduring influence often does not originate from offering the most comprehensively rational or even the objectively optimal solution. Instead, it frequently stems from presenting the simplest, most cognitively palatable explanation, one that effectively alleviates pervasive cognitive discomfort and simultaneously provides a profound sense of certainty. Such leaders do not engage in protracted, nuanced debates concerning multifaceted realities. Rather, they masterfully define the very terms of public discourse by artfully promulgating compellingly simple, emotionally resonant, and often misleading narratives. They possess the chilling foresight to understand that in an information-saturated world, a world where individuals are perpetually battling cognitive overload, The one who can most effectively furnish clarity, however specious that clarity may ultimately prove to be, wields immense and almost irresistible psychological sway. This mastery grants them the near mystical capacity to subtly yet effectively guide vast populations towards meticulously predetermined outcomes, because individuals, desperate for liberation from the burdensome demands of independent cognitive effort, willingly surrender their critical faculties for the immense, comforting embrace of a pre-packaged truth. They become the singular authoritative voice within a bewildering cacophony of uncertainty, not necessarily by being factually correct, but by being undeniably comprehensible and emotionally resonant. A beacon of apparent clarity in a world of pervasive fog, a master of the simplified truth, and a weaver of compelling, if often deceptive, narratives. The third profound insight Machiavelli brought to light concerns the powerful, often subconscious human need for belonging and social conformity. He understood that humans are fundamentally social creatures, deeply wired by millennia of evolution to seek acceptance and to fear isolation. This innate predisposition means that individuals often value group cohesion and social approval above individual truth, or even their rational self-interest. This inherent drive for conformity creates an almost irresistible psychological pressure to align one's beliefs and behaviors with the perceived norms of the collective, rendering individuals remarkably susceptible to pervasive collective influence. The fear of standing alone, of being an outlier, of facing social rejection, of being cast into the cold abyss of solitude, is often a more potent force than the pursuit of personal truth, individual ethics, or even logical consistency. It is a social death that many will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid, sacrificing personal convictions for communal acceptance and validation. In Chapter 13 of The Prince, Machiavelli discusses how native troops are superior to auxiliaries or mercenaries, attributing this superiority to their inherent loyalty to their own state and countrymen. This observation extends far beyond mere military loyalty to encompass a broader, more profound psychological truth. Humans will fight for, believe in, and conform to the will of their own kind, their own tribe, their own perceived in-group, even when confronted with overwhelming contradictory evidence or significant personal discomfort. The deeply primal fear of ostracism, of being cast out of the social group, of losing one's social standing, is a profoundly potent motivator, frequently more compelling than the fear of physical harm, financial ruin, or even the loss of personal integrity. It is a social death that many will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid, sacrificing personal convictions for communal acceptance and validation, a chilling testament to the power of the collective. The cohesion of a society, Machiavelli noted, rests not just on laws, but on this shared psychological imperative. Consider the meticulous social engineering of ancient Sparta. Spartan society was not merely disciplined by an elaborate system of laws. Its rigorous adherence was systematically enforced by an all-pervasive, omnipresent culture of intense social conformity. From the tender age of 7, individuals were systematically stripped of personal identity and meticulously subsumed into the collective. Boys were raised in communal barracks, undergoing brutal, relentless training, meticulously taught to value the group above all else, including their own lives. Any deviation from the rigid Spartan norm was met with not just severe physical punishment, but with an even more psychologically devastating consequence: social shaming and the profound threat of ostracism, a fate frequently regarded as far worse than physical death. People willingly chose to endure unimaginable physical hardship, to selflessly sacrifice personal desires, and even to die bravely and unflinchingly in battle, not merely for abstract patriotic ideals, but fundamentally for the profound, visceral psychological reward of belonging, of not disappointing their peers, of adhering unreservedly to the brutal, unquestioned norms of the collective. The fear of being perceived as weak, as an outsider, as a non-Spartan, was the ultimate and most effective enforcer of the Spartan way, providing chilling empirical support for Machiavelli's insight into the overwhelming and often terrifying power of social belonging and conformity. Their very identity, their very self-worth, was inextricably linked to their unwavering adherence to the group, a loyalty enforced by the very threat of social non-existence. This created an army of not just soldiers, but a single, unified organism driven by a collective psychological imperative. Modern psychology, particularly illuminated by seminal studies in social proof, groupthink, and the classic Asch conformity experiments, provides chillingly robust empirical validation for Machiavelli's keen observation. The Asch experiments famously and repeatedly demonstrated that individuals will unequivocally deny plain empirical facts, such as the observable length of a line, if a majority of their peers unanimously and confidently assert a different, factually incorrect answer. This phenomenon does not occur because the individuals are intellectually deficient. Rather, it occurs because the psychological pressure to conform, to avoid being perceived as an outlier, to not disrupt the perceived social harmony, is immense and often irresistible. We are, by our very nature, wired to follow the crowd, to instinctively trust the perceived collective judgment, and to seek constant validation from our immediate social group. This inherent tendency makes us incredibly susceptible to manipulated consensus, even when our own senses and rational judgment contradict it. This is why manufactured consensus is so frighteningly effective. It bypasses individual reason through the power of the group. Think about the pervasive and often destructive power of social media trends and the rapid proliferation of cancel culture today. Individuals, who are often intelligent, well-meaning, and possess independent thought, will publicly align themselves with certain viewpoints or stridently disavow others, not necessarily because they have independently and rationally arrived at those conclusions themselves. Rather, they do so because the perceived social cost of nonconformity, the imminent threat of being cancelled, publicly ostracized, or subjected to intense public shaming, is simply perceived as too high to bear. The deeply ingrained, almost visceral human desire to belong, to be an accepted part of the prevailing narrative, creates an immensely powerful psychological current that often sweeps individuals along, frequently against their own private convictions or rational judgment. This is precisely how Machiavelli understood the most effective lever of public opinion, not through painstaking logical persuasion, but through the irresistible, often terrifying force of perceived consensus and social pressure. This is how entire societies can be made to believe things that are patently false, simply because everyone else seems to believe them, and the cost of dissent is too high to contemplate, leading to a chilling conformity of thought and action, enforced not by law, but by social fear. The practical application for the untouchable leader is profoundly astute. True influence is frequently gained not by laboriously persuading individuals one by one through rational argument, but by artfully shaping the perceived social norm. They do not futilely fight against the inexorable tide of prevailing public opinion. Rather, they skillfully and subtly create that tide. They possess the chilling foresight to establish, almost imperceptibly, what is considered acceptable, what is deemed praiseworthy, and what is utterly shunned within a given social group or collective. They understand with terrifying clarity that the vast majority of individuals will willingly conform to the perceived will of the majority, even if that majority is entirely manufactured or is predicated upon demonstrably false premises. This profound understanding grants them the almost mystical capacity to guide vast populations towards meticulously predetermined goals, because individuals driven by their deep-seated, evolutionarily ingrained need for belonging willingly and eagerly adopt the beliefs and behaviors that signal their unwavering adherence to the group. They master the art of being the masterful conductor of the social orchestra, not merely a single, isolated player within it, but the one who composes the very score, harmonizing the collective towards their own strategic ends, securing loyalty through inclusion. The fourth profound insight Machiavelli identified penetrates the often disguised human pursuit of self-interest. He observed that individuals, at their core, are fundamentally driven by their own needs, desires, and paramount self-preservation. This insight leads to the chilling conclusion that even seemingly altruistic, virtuous, or noble actions frequently conceal a pragmatic, self-serving, and often coldly rational calculus. This understanding provides a cynical, yet empirically accurate lens through which to view the entirety of human motivation, recognizing that openly declared intentions often diverge significantly from the true, underlying psychological drivers. This isn't about inherent human malevolence, it's about the fundamental, efficient, and often ruthless design of human nature itself, a design optimized for survival and proliferation above all else. In Chapter 20 of The Prince, Machiavelli discusses whether constructing fortresses is advantageous. He concludes that the best fortress is to be found in the love of the people, for although you may have fortresses, they will not save you if you are hated by the people. This seemingly benevolent statement on its surface appears to advocate for popular affection. However, it is, in its deeper Machiavellian interpretation, a profoundly self-interested one. The ruler cultivates love, or more accurately, meticulously avoids widespread hatred and contempt, not out of genuine selfless affection for the populace, but precisely because it is identified as the most secure and effective means of ultimate self-preservation. It represents a meticulously calculated strategic decision that securing and maintaining popular support serves the prince's paramount self-interest far more effectively and reliably than any mere physical defenses. It is a cynical calculus where the good of the people is directly proportional to the ruler's security and longevity. The people are a vital resource, and their love is a calculated strategic investment in one's own power, a tool to be managed, cultivated and leveraged, not genuinely felt. Consider the intricate web of feudal loyalty in medieval Japan. The legendary samurai, renowned for their adherence to the Bushido code of honor, unshakable loyalty, and profound self-sacrifice, appear on the surface to embody selfless devotion to their daimyo, feudal lord. Yet a Machiavellian analyst would immediately discern a profound and undeniable self-interest meticulously woven into the very fabric of this apparent selflessness. A samurai's unwavering loyalty to his lord was rarely, if ever, purely altruistic. It fundamentally guaranteed his esteemed social status, his inherited land, his economic livelihood, and, crucially, his family's protection within a brutal and unforgiving societal structure. The lord, in turn, provided these essential benefits: land, status, protection, not solely out of pure benevolence, but because the samurai's absolute loyalty was an indispensable prerequisite for maintaining military strength, ensuring political stability, and defending his own domain. The entire feudal system was, at its core, a mutually beneficial, albeit frequently brutal, and hierarchical exchange of carefully calibrated self-interests, meticulously disguised and sanctified by a powerful, all-encompassing code of honor and duty. The deepest, most enduring loyalty often flowed directly from the deepest, most fundamental self-interest, with each party's survival and prosperity inextricably linked to the others. This isn't romanticized sacrifice, it's intelligent, strategic survival, a testament to Machiavelli's ruthless realism, where loyalty is a transaction, not a sentiment. Modern psychology, particularly evolutionary psychology and the study of reciprocal altruism, provides compelling scientific backing for Machiavelli's often condemned, yet empirically robust, cynical view of human motivation. We frequently engage in what appear to be altruistic acts of kindness, generosity, or cooperation, not just out of pure benevolence, but because they inherently carry long-term benefits for our own survival, enhance our social reputation, or indirectly contribute to our genetic propagation. We help others not merely for the sake of helping, but because we intuitively expect some form of reciprocation, whether tangible, a future favor, or intangible, enhanced social standing or reputation, to materialize in the future. This isn't to deny the existence of genuine selfless altruism in isolated instances, but rather to highlight that self-interest, often operating below the level of conscious awareness, is a far more pervasive, reliable, and ultimately predictable motivator of human behavior than most people are willing to consciously acknowledge or admit. The alignment of doing good with doing well is not a coincidence, but a fundamental, observable aspect of human social interaction, a core principle that governs our every exchange, from the simplest handshake to the most complex international treaty. Think about the ubiquitous phenomenon of corporate social responsibility, CSR programs today. Corporations invest vast sums, millions, even billions, in environmental initiatives, philanthropic endeavors, and meticulously curated ethical labor practices. On the surface, these appear to be unadulterated acts of pure corporate virtue and selfless benevolence. Yet a Machiavellian analyst would immediately and dispassionately recognize the profound self-interest meticulously woven into the very fabric of these initiatives. CSR demonstrably improves public image, effectively attracts discerning ethical consumers and highly talented employees, judiciously mitigates regulatory risks, and frequently opens entirely new lucrative markets. The good performed by these corporations is almost always meticulously aligned with their ultimate financial bottom line, an astute act of enlightened self-interest, cunningly disguised as pure benevolence. It is a strategic investment in legitimacy and long-term profitability, a calculated move on the corporate chessboard designed to secure enduring competitive advantage, demonstrating that virtue can be a highly profitable strategy. The practical application for the untouchable leader is chillingly simple and remarkably effective. Never appeal to an individual's pure abstract altruism when their deeply ingrained self-interest can be far more effectively and reliably harnessed. They possess the chilling clarity to understand that effective motivation rarely stems from moral exhortations. Instead, it involves meticulously structuring situations and proposals so that individuals inherently perceive their own paramount self-interest, aligning perfectly and seamlessly with the leader's overarching objectives. They do not request sacrifices from their followers without simultaneously offering a clear, tangible, and frequently self-serving reward in return. Whether that reward manifests as enhanced social status, increased personal wealth, profound existential security, or a deep sense of belonging to a powerful collective. By astutely catering to the fundamental human inclination for self-preservation and relentless personal advancement, even when this inclination is skillfully disguised by noble rhetoric or lofty ideals, they construct robust, profoundly reliable systems of cooperation. This is because every participant, from the lowest subordinate to the highest ally, genuinely believes they are ultimately serving their own personal interests, even as their cumulative actions meticulously serve the leader's paramount agenda. This masterful understanding and subtle manipulation of disguised self-interest creates an immensely robust and enduring system of influence, one that is virtually immune to the fleeting whims of pure benevolence or abstract morality. It ensures unwavering loyalty, not through fragile sentiment, but through the cold, hard logic of mutual benefit, a logic that rarely falters when applied with precision. These four profound insights, meticulously extracted from Niccolò Machiavelli's ancient genius and chillingly validated by the meticulous findings of modern psychology, reveal the immutable truths of human predictability. They systematically dismantle the comforting illusions that human beings are primarily rational, independent, unburdened by simplicity, or solely motivated by altruism. From our fundamental irrationality and susceptibility to biases, to our desperate craving for simplicity and certainty, to our overpowering need for belonging and social conformity, and finally, to our pervasive pursuit of self-interest, often cleverly disguised. These are the timeless mechanisms that have for over 5 centuries shaped our collective consciousness. They are the invisible gears that have driven the human machine through every era, across every culture, and in every form of social organization, from tribal chiefs to global CEOs. Machiavelli didn't concern himself with how humanity should behave. His singular, ruthless focus was on how humanity does behave, driven by a profound understanding of these core psychological predispositions. He created a framework for comprehending not just the actions of princes and states, but the underlying predictable impulses that govern every single individual. This isn't merely academic knowledge. It's a profound lens through which to view the world, one that exposes the hidden levers of influence and the subtle vulnerabilities within the human psyche. The knowledge of these truths is now undeniably yours, a tool for dissection and mastery, a map to the human labyrinth. The world around you is constantly being shaped by those who intuitively or deliberately understand these ancient insights. Every advertisement you encounter, every political speech you hear, every social media trend you witness, every strategic corporate maneuver you observe, they are all, at their core, meticulously crafted applications of these fundamental psychological truths. You can choose to remain a bewildered observer, passively navigating a world of seemingly random events, or you can embrace this ancient genius, confirmed by modern science, and begin to perceive the underlying order, the predictable patterns, and the hidden currents of influence that truly drive human affairs. You can become an active player in the grand game of human interaction, rather than merely a bewildered pawn, always reactive, never truly initiating, for your eyes will now be open to the unseen mechanisms. This isn't about becoming a master manipulator or adopting a posture of cynicism for its own sake. It is, fundamentally, about becoming a master of self-awareness and environmental understanding. It's about meticulously recognizing when your own biases are being subtly exploited, when your innate craving for simplicity is being satisfied with comfortable yet ultimately misleading narratives, when your primal need for belonging is being skillfully used to silence your independent thought, and when your pursuit of self-interest is being cleverly disguised to serve someone else's paramount agenda. It's about seeing the matrix not just as an abstract concept, but as the very fabric of your daily reality, and understanding your precise position within it, empowering you to navigate it with unprecedented clarity. The battle for your mind, for your choices, for your very perception of reality has been raging for centuries, largely unseen, fought with weapons more subtle than any sword or cannon. Machiavelli provided the first comprehensive battlefield map, detailing the strategic landscape of human psychology. Modern psychology provides the precision satellite imagery and the granular neurological understanding of how these mechanisms operate within the brain. The choice now is stark. Will you remain an unknowing casualty, perpetually adrift in a sea of manipulated choices, or will you join the ranks of those who understand the terrain and can navigate it with purpose for yourself and for those you choose to lead? This knowledge carries a heavy, almost uncomfortable weight. It unveils the inconvenient truth that our minds, in their relentless evolutionary quest for efficiency and comfort, are remarkably pliable and profoundly susceptible to external shaping. But it also offers the profound liberation that comes from understanding these ploys. You can now recognize the invisible strings that control human behavior. You can choose not to be a puppet. You can choose to be the puppeteer of your own destiny, master of your own mental landscape, navigating the intricate human theater with newfound insight and control. Which of Machiavelli's psychological insights, now chillingly confirmed by modern psychology, do you find most unsettling? And which do you believe is most pervasive in your own society today? Tell me in the comments below. And subscribe to this channel for more unfiltered truths about power, influence, and the unchanging nature of humanity. The era of comfortable illusions, of naive belief in universal good intentions, is unequivocally over. The age of enlightened strategic living, grounded in the unvarnished truth of human nature, begins now, for those brave enough to look beyond the veil.